I'm really, really excited to move into the 4 energetic bodies that help us kind of close off this framework, which are social, financial, primal, and spiritual. I'm a big believer that connection is medicine, right? When we fulfill the social body, we feel supported and we feel alive. As I think about the interconnection of the social body to the remaining bodies, the one that feels, interestingly enough, what I felt was the most relevant to the social body as I was processing the 4 bodies we were going to speak about today is the financial body. And the reason that I say that is because without a fully fulfilled financial body, it is really difficult to enable the social body. Money is energy. It's a mirror for the way in which we value ourselves, and it is a resource. So it is a mirror in the way in which we manage our resources. When our finances are chaotic or confusing or in disarray, it is oftentimes very difficult to manage any of the other 7 energetic bodies. The primal body is one that I feel like is really underrepresented, the most raw and instinctual version of ourself. Part that thrives in sunlight, in nature, in movement, in breath. When we come back to our home, we also come back into connection with the divine, which leads me to the spiritual body. Purpose and meaning and guidance and truth all exist in this space of divinity. All right, welcome back. Another episode of How to Stay Human. So grateful to have you all with us. We spent the last episode thinking that we were going to be able to walk you all through what's been of amazing service to us, which is this framework in which we live our lives, these 7 energetic bodies. And we realized that the breadth of them is so significant that we would need to carve time in another episode just to make sure that we gave them each the appropriate attention and intention, which is a really big part of where these mental models and frameworks help us come into service with our life. They allow us to come into a greater state of balance and awareness, and they allow us to operate again from a greater state of attention, being able to see all of life, and a greater state of intention in terms of how we act towards all that life has for us. So I'm really, really excited to move into the 4 energetic bodies that help us kind of close off this framework, which are social, financial, primal, and spiritual. And I want to start with them in this particular order because last episode, we spent a lot of time talking about this idea of the emotional body, right? And what it means to come into regulation with your emotions, what it means to name your emotions, what it means to understand your emotions, and what it also means to be free with your emotions and how you can influence and impact the world as a result of your openness and vulnerability. That being said, emotions do not exist in isolation. While we do experience them so often with ourselves, a lot of our conversation was about actually how do we show ourselves emotionally to the world around us and in connection with others, because emotions more often than not live and breathe in the people that we come into connection with and that we share our lives with. So that is where the social body comes in. When I think about the social body, Tori and I have been blessed with over the course of our lives being really amazing community builders. And we've gotten to connect with a lot of amazing people. And I'm a big believer that connection is medicine, right? Without having a sense of belonging, we oftentimes have a really hard time being connected to our own identity. And yet when it's nourished, when we fulfill the social body, we feel supported and we feel alive. And yet when we don't, even the things that we achieve in our life can oftentimes feel empty. We can all name the billionaire who's achieved all of the quote unquote levels of success that we would otherwise consider to be great, and yet feels isolated and alone and feels like all of that was worth nothing. So really excited to spend some time on the social body and what that looks like. One question that I have for you, and I'm curious how you perceive the social body, is how do you nourish your social body without also creating time and space for yourself, right? And while also doing it in a way that doesn't feel like it's taking away from you, because oftentimes relationships can feel very energetically depleting if they're not serving us. So how do you strike that balance?
I want to take a moment to share about a powerful mental health resource that has been a total game changer for me, and that's Anywhere Clinic. For the past 2.5 years, I've been working with an online psychiatric provider, and the impact has truly been incredible because therapy isn't just a tool for crisis moments. It's a tool for personal growth, emotional mastery, and overall wellness. And with Anywhere Clinic, you can get virtual expert care from the comfort of your home. Whether you're exploring ketamine therapy, you need medication management, or just a supportive guide, it's time to prioritize you. And you can by visiting anywhereclinic.com. You can book an online appointment for as low as $120 or check and see if your insurance covers it. So go to anywhereclinic.com because your mental health deserves it.
First thing I will say is that the quality of our lives is determined by the quality of our relationships, period.
You are a reflection of the 5 people that you surround yourself the most with.
Yeah. And this framework of talking about the 7 energetic bodies is a framework for health, holistic health in every area, not just physical health, but what does it mean to be emotionally healthy, mentally healthy, relationally healthy, right? Is what we're talking about here. And to your point about relationships that deplete us or take away from us, I would assert are typically relationships that are lacking or aren't as healthy as they could be potentially. And so how do I balance personal time with social or connective time with other people? And the one word I will use to describe that is boundaries. If you do not have boundaries, you are going to suck at this because you're not going to know where you end and other people begin. And if you can't differentiate between those and then set up doorways for you to walk through into connection, then you're going to feel flooded by the relationships in your life. And you are likely going to be overwhelmed by connection. And so you're either going to isolate yourself because you lack boundaries, and that's the only boundary you know how to put into place is just self-isolation because you don't know how to deal with the input of energy and connection, or you're going to be a people pleaser and likely be so focused on everybody else, whether you're trying to save or fix other people, or you're trying to just source something from being in connection that you feel like you can't fill yourself. There's so many ways this can become unhealthy if we don't have proper boundaries in place. So the number one thing I'll say is knowing what I want to say yes to and what I want to say no to. What is important to me? What are my values? And then how do I make decisions based on those values? And connection is one of the highest values. And what I call my big 4, connection is up there. And that means connection with myself, connection with God, and connection with others. Mm-hmm. So how do I balance those? And it's with attention and intention, of course, and understanding that, the relationships that I have in terms of client relationships are not same relationships I have in my personal relationships, right? I have a relationship with everything, not just people. I have a relationship with time and money and all the things. So this is a whole relationship conversation in general. And understanding what is my relationship to this thing. So ask yourself, what is your relationship? What is the environment of your relationships look like right now with community? Do you have community, or are you feeling alone and isolated? There are different seasons for different things. And we were going to talk about this at some point too. It's like different seasons, you have different priorities. In some seasons, like when Kyle was first living in Austin, he talks all the time about like what was priority for you then is like a lot of social connection, a lot of exploration, a lot of being in the mix with other people, a lot of like all, networking. And so there's a lot of social engagement. Whereas now we're in a different season of our life where we're building a foundation for family and future. And as much as we love building community, we're also very focused on nurturing different relationships now. Right. So
like this one.
The number one thing I'll just say is boundaries. And we can go closer, like deeper into that if you want to.
Mm-hmm. I was just saying this is the relationship that I want to nurture. And I think it kind of gets back to like a point that Tori was making, even though I say that very jovially and very literally as well. I think it's also about just getting really, really clear on like what the priorities of your life are, right? What are the priorities? What are the focuses? And how do all of these energetic bodies then serve and lift up those goals, those visions, and those values that you hold for your life? Now, what can happen on the flip of that is if I don't have clear values, goals, and visions, I then have relationships that exist in my life simply just to fill space and time, right? And I've seen that a lot with people that I love, in that they just spend time with people just to be able to spend the time with something, right? And it becomes a tool for distraction rather than it does to actually create some sort of additional value or some sort of fulfillment in your life. And that's not to say that you can't have friends that don't have a function or a purpose. Let's be super clear here, because we don't want to think about the relationships in our life because of that. Relationships can just be, they can just exist because they're awesome in and of themselves. I have many, many friends that I love and connect with that may not be the people that are going to stretch me into my next business goal, or may not be the people who are going to take me to my next spiritual evolution, but I love them. They love me. It's a joyful, connected, wonderful experience when we're together. And that sometimes is enough. So it's not about necessarily taking people away. It's about understanding how people serve you. And most importantly, not welcoming people into your space that are energy vampires, as some might call them, that are people that are detracting from what makes you great. And so, again, I think that coming back to what Tori and I have both been saying here, it really comes back to a question of what do I want, right? And how do the things in my life serve that? And then the other piece is that once I am clear on those, once I bring people in my life that lift up the things that I desire, that are of service to me, and that in one way or another are supporting one of these the other key 6 energetic bodies, once I'm actually in relationship with someone, how do I nurture that relationship, right? I think a challenge that many of us have, I know I certainly have, is having wonderful relationships, but not investing in them in the way that they deserve, right? You can't take love for granted, and you certainly can't take people for granted, because those people will not stay there. And so when I'm in right relationship with someone, I have to ask myself, what does that look like? And what's the standard that I'm going to hold myself to? How am I going to love? Right. And for me, probably the most important part of loving someone for me is being deeply present and invested in my time with them. Right. So it comes back to some of the conversations we were having on the previous episode of cutting down the consumption and cutting down the noise so that I can be aware, intentional, and present with the things that I care about most, including other people. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, as someone that does this both professionally, right, and personally, you're deeply invested in the lives of the people that you care about. So I'm curious for you, how do you stay present? Like, how do you stay, especially amidst all of the moving parts that exist in your space? How do you stay present and aware and intentional and supportive of those in your life, while also not allowing that to become overwhelming to a point where that's, you're unclear on where your line ends and theirs begins?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what we're talking about is conscious relating. Unconscious relating is where we don't ask these questions. We don't know any of this, and we're just doing things on default and autopilot, and then just seeing what happens. What we're talking about is bringing awareness and intentionality and consciousness to all of our relationships. And for me, it's understanding my capacity of what do I have capacity to show up for and give. And like the cost of intentional, deep relationships and community is inconvenience. Like, we do live in a world where it's like, it's just like, cancel the plans and like honor yourself and like just, if you just say no. And I'm all about boundaries, and I do say no all the time. But I also understand that if I want deep, meaningful connections, I've got to invest in deep, meaningful connections. There's a cost for sure. And I'm willing to pay that cost. And there are times when I have to be open and honest with certain friends about, this is what I have capacity for. And when I'm present with you, what I can commit to is being where my feet are and being fully with you in this time that we do have. I might not have a ton of time every single week to give, but when we do carve out the time, and I will make it an intention to do so, I will make sure that that is rich and nourishing for both of us. You know what I mean? Because I'm going to be present for it. So how do I stay present is being with where my feet are. Yeah. Right. And just allowing myself to not overcommit. Yeah, exactly. I don't overcommit. That is one of the things that I've learned, because I used to do it, and I don't function at my best when I'm just moving from one thing to another thing. I like having the spaciousness to be able to drop in and have a really deep present moment with people. And so when I do connect with people, I create the spaciousness for it, but then I don't overcommit to where now I'm depleted and I don't have anything to give.
Yes. So it's quality over quantity, just like everything else in life, right? It's about how if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it all the way. And if I can't, I won't. And the fear that sometimes can get kicked up there is that I can potentially lose love. Right. But you can't lose love. We've shared this on many episodes before. And one of the things that I think you'll find that I've certainly found with the relationships in my life is that I have such more deep and meaningful connections with people that I connect with once every 3 months than the people that I try to force to connection with every day. And so I've just completely moved away from that and focused on deep and meaningful connections that might not have the frequency of what I used to consider to be a deep and meaningful connection, and have found that that model totally flipped on itself, because what everyone wants more than anything is they want to feel you. Right? They want to feel your heart. They want to feel your presence. They want to feel your gaze. Even if they can't name that and speak it, that's ultimately what we all desire. We want to be seen and paid attention to when we're with one another. And so for me, and this relates to building community, this relates to building interpersonal and individual connections. It's just making sure that I can fully show up for that person in that moment if I'm going to be investing my time there.
I'm also very clear about my why. Because I don't like to waste my time.
100%.
I'm not doing things just to do it. And I'm not spending time with people just to fill my time either. Now, that doesn't mean sometimes I just don't do things for the fun of it or just because. But more times than not, I'm asking myself, why am I doing this? What's my intention of taking time to do anything in my life? And I think that knowing your why is really important, because it helps you filter what you say yes to. And when you say no to something, it's know that that's okay. And then don't beat yourself up and go back and forth of should I do it? Should I have not? There've been a couple times in our relationship where we're committed to something and we're committed to a social gathering. And then all of a sudden you're like, I don't want to go. Should we go? Should we not go? Should we go?
Yes,
you know what I mean? And oftentimes we find that sticking with our commitment is actually great.
Yeah.
But are there moments where we're like, I want to back out last minute? For sure. How do you navigate stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Mr. Social.
Well, I think for me, to Tori's point, I'm so deeply intentional with every minute of my time that if I feel like something is potentially not going to be in the greatest service to that minute, I can get some last minute anxiety that'll kick in and be like, well, what if I use that time for something else? Or what if I'm not nourishing myself enough? And really what that's doing is it's pointing to something else in your life that's not being served. If I'm feeling that last minute anxiety to go to a social gathering because I want to spend time with myself, that's because I'm not creating enough time for my spiritual body or my emotional body, or just that pure investment in myself. So it's very rarely a reflection of the thing that you're doing and more a reflection of the thing that you're missing, which again, why it comes into the greater balance of all of these energetic bodies. What I'll also say as it relates to social connection, and I think this is one that Tori and I have been practicing a lot over our relationship, and I've been now practicing this for some time over the last several years, I know you have as well individually, is just really, really, really recognizing, and I mentioned this earlier, that we are a product of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. And so being highly intentional with who those people are, because those people are fractions of you, right? We see ourselves in everybody. They see ourselves in us, and we become as a result of that, we become this collection of the souls that exist in our lives, right? And so if you're noticing things that may not be natural to you that are all of a sudden appearing, I would invite yourself to look out in the world around you, particularly the people around you, of where that might exist in them. And what that sometimes can mean is that means saying no to people that you would otherwise normally say yes to, because they're not meeting the standard of the life that you desire to live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, one of the things I'll just quickly add in to this is, if you're surrounded with people who have no framework, no systems, no ways of, are always chaotic, or always flying by the seat of their pants, or always late to things, or always everything's just a mess, you're likely going to feel that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You're likely also experiencing some of that. And so this is, for me, what I prioritize is co-elevation. I'm not afraid to outgrow people. That doesn't mean I don't love them. That doesn't mean they're not important to me. That doesn't mean we are not deeply connected. But like we said, we all only have capacity for so much. And we're really clear about what nourishes us, and where, if you're in relationships with people where you're always the one inspiring and giving and teaching and showing up, and you're always one holding space for them, and you're always the one that's, making connections, just, you got to be honest with yourself about it at some point.
Yes, I totally agree.
Otherwise, resentment grows, and you can tell where, if you feel resentment in your relationships, that's an indicator.
That's a great indicator. That's a great signal to say, I need to look closely at this relationship. And possibly it's not always no. Sometimes it's, I just need a break, and that's okay too.
Totally.
Especially for family. A family is a perfect example of this, because you rarely can say no to family permanently, like you could potentially another connection in your life, but you can also say, I need some space, and that's okay. And again, as I've shared before, that openness and vulnerability will actually touch and lead people a lot more than you just ignoring their message. Right. So again, really tuning into who are the people that I surround myself with the most, who have I outgrown, who do I need space from, and also what spaces am I in where I actually feel a little bit challenged and stretched? What spaces am I in where I'm like, I'm a small fish in this pond, right? I would lean more heavily into those spaces, because those are the spaces where a lot of growth can exist for you. And also, again, starting as a small fish in a big pond, so to speak, you will eventually become a big fish in that big pond too, because again, we are a product of the environment that we surround ourselves in. So,
lastly, I'll just say, ask yourself, are the relationships in your life reminding you who you've been or who you're becoming?
Absolutely. Just yes. Yes to that.
Onwards.
So spending time in our social body, recognizing that a sense of belonging is incredibly important, recognizing that the right people in that space are critical to us being able to live a fully balanced life. So the social body, and, as I think about the interconnection of the social body to the remaining bodies, the one that feels, interestingly enough, what I felt was the most relevant to the social body as I was processing the 4 bodies we were going to speak about today is the financial body. And the reason that I say that is because without a fully fulfilled financial body, it is really difficult to enable the social body. It's true. I mean, a lot of really deep, meaningful connection comes as a result of being able to enable the financial body, i.e., I want to go to the great festival. I want to go to the awesome trip. I want to go around the world and travel with you. Some of the most meaningful and personal connections come as a result of being able to enable the financial body. So Tori and I have been living in the financial body a lot recently as we've been thinking about developing our future and enabling the other bodies to exist. So I'd love to spend some time thinking about the financial body less as a spreadsheet with a series of numbers and more as recognizing something that I know we've all heard before, which is this idea that money is energy, right? Money is energy. It's a mirror for the way in which we value ourselves, and it is a resource. So it is a mirror in the way in which we manage our resources. When our finances are chaotic or confusing or in disarray, it is oftentimes very difficult to manage any of the other 7 energetic bodies.
We're in survival.
100%. All of a sudden, our physical body, we're not able to nourish it in the way that we want. Our emotional body receives no attention at that point. Our spiritual body typically receives no attention. Our social body, unsurprisingly, also receives very little attention. And the whole systems can start to crumble. So the financial body is one where I feel like most people, and guilty as charged on this next statement here, tend to ignore it until it's knocking on the door, right? It's like, oh, everything's fine. How many people have we spoken to? And I ask the listeners as well, who are like, I don't know, I haven't really checked my bank account. I don't really know what's going on in there until they get the letter, right? Or they get the knock on the door, or they get the phone call and they're like, oh my gosh, right? Why'd I wait until now? Now the problem is 10x bigger than what it could have been if I would have been willing to pay attention. And I think that's really an overarching theme for all these energetic bodies is don't wait to look at them until the problem exists, because the problem will be 10 to 100 times bigger than if you were willing to take a look at them today.
I just want to say, because the cost and the consequence of putting things off is high, right? And we're always negotiating with ourselves about like, is this necessary today? Or do I need to do this week? Or do I need to do this month? Or do I need to do this year? And again, having systems to support yourself in tracking this stuff and measuring this stuff is essential, because otherwise we have to call it out that we're living in some level of avoidance and neglect. And if you avoid and neglect something for too long, it will suffer and break down, and you will suffer as a byproduct, right? And I don't want that for me. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for our children. I don't want that for our friends and for our community. And I'm so tired, frankly, of hearing people that I love and care about struggle in this area of their life because they haven't had either the skills. It's not just, yes, resources are important, having the resources, and, there's so much that goes into that, but also having the fundamental skills to manage the money, because like we said, we've been saying, as we've been talking about this, the last few weeks, is new level, different devil, like you could have the problem of, I'm just not making enough money, or I don't have enough income coming in. And that's a problem. Right. But then you could have the problem, you have all this money. And then if you don't know how to manage it, that's also a problem. Different problems, different skill sets that need to be developed.
Problems.
Right. So it's not that money's necessarily solve your problems. They just come with a different set of them that you're going to have to learn new skills to solve. Yes. So can we learn to be skillful in these areas of our lives?
Here's the great news. All of the energetic bodies can be managed differently. Some have very, very, kind of vague and less tangible ways in which we can approach them. The emotional body, the spiritual body, even in some cases, the social body, that's kind of playing with the unseen in some ways. The financial body, fortunately, has very clear tactical steps that you can take right now to master it. And the beautiful thing about the financial body as well is that I think for a long time we felt as a society like these tips and tricks were reserved for the rich. But thanks to the internet, now everything that you could possibly need to live a financially free life is available to you at your fingertips. And now we take it one step further with AI, and managing money and managing and allocating it appropriately has never been easier.
Well, I do also want to just name, though, the current environment and economic situation that we're in, and how that affects people. Because although, yes, it's great that we have the internet, and it's great that a lot of information is available to us, and there is a system-wide economic issue that's happening that is impacting people's ability to make money right now. People are more than not chronically losing jobs right now. So we just want to also bring that awareness forward, and not just say this from if you want to be rich, like everything's out there for you to be rich right now. You know what I mean? There are things you can do to support yourself. And looking at these things and understanding what your financial roadmap looks like and where you are, given whatever financial situation you're in, is going to be critical for getting yourself to whatever goal it is that you have for yourself. Because some people are going from -0 to 100, like climbing out of a financial hole that they found themselves in, whether that's you put yourself in that situation, or you were furloughed or laid off and you haven't been able to get a job in a year. You know what I mean? You've experienced that.
Oh yeah.
So we understand what that's like when you think, I'm going to take a sabbatical, I'm going to take a little bit of time off. And then that ends up getting a little longer than you expect. And sometimes people are trying to just get back to baseline versus people who are at baseline are trying to go to, create the futures that they want. So people are at all different points of this journey, and it's okay wherever port you're in. The importance is, are we aware of where we're at
100%
and where we want to be going?
I don't want to deny that, or I don't want to state that any of this is easy, to be clear. I'm not saying that the system is designed for this to work in your favor. I'm not saying that the job market is amazing, but what I am saying with certainty is that the tools are available to you to be able to create the life that you financially desire. And there are more opportunities if we're focusing on income specifically, which I actually don't think is the primary driver here of this greater conversation, but we'll speak about that in a moment. But that being said, there are more ways to generate income than there ever have been before. And so even when the conventional paths like the job market aren't of service to you, these are the times where we can get really, really creative. And that's why you see the people who
have to.
Right. And that's why you see the people that stretch themselves the furthest when it comes to income generation often tap into new streams that have never existed before and are tapping into an abundance of capital that's available. So the point being is that it's an abundant energy like anything else, right? There's an infinite opportunity there, like any of the other energetic bodies, when we treat it as such and we don't treat it as a limiting factor in our life because of whatever the market conditions are. You're not victim to the market. You can take full control of your financial life. And I think there are some really, really simple and practical ways that you can get started there. So for me, I'll introduce 2 frameworks that have been really, really effective. Many of these are passed through a book that my dad gave me years and years and years ago. And as always, I wish I started earlier.
That's always the thing. We always wish we'd started earlier. We always wish we started earlier. But at the same time, now is the best time to begin. So if you haven't, go. And if you have, keep going, because both of those are really, really important, is to get started and then to continue. But the book that I wanted to reference is called The Wealthy Barber. It's a great narrative tale of a man who sits down with his barber in a barber shop, and the barber gives him some really sage financial wisdom in terms of how to manage his money. And it helps to shape some really basic frameworks that you can implement into your financial life to make sure that you don't end up in a position where you get caught off guard by the thing that you weren't willing to pay attention to. So first and foremost, we'll start with a framework of 4, and then we'll break it down a little bit further into a distribution model. And then there's a couple of tools that we'll recommend. We'll close with that, and we can certainly dig deeper into this in future episodes. This is a world that Tori and I are playing very deeply with right now, and there'll be more that comes up for us over the coming months and coming years as we look to build a really stable financial foundation for ourselves as well. But first and foremost, awareness, income management, and allocation. Right. So spent some time on 2 of these already, so I'll briefly touch on them. But awareness is pretty straightforward, which is actually just knowing your numbers. Rip the Band-Aid off.
Yes. Rip the Band-Aid off. There's some amazing tools that will do the work for you. So you don't need to worry about going and trying to dig into spreadsheets and look at statements. The bottom line is, like, don't be afraid to look. Information is power, right? Knowledge is power. Ignorance is not bliss when it comes to finance. It might feel good for a day or 2. It's not going to feel good for a month or several years, or most importantly, when the inevitable happens, which is some crazy shit comes up, right? Whether it's an unexpected bill, an injury, a disability, or so forth. That is why the awareness is so incredibly important, so that you can prepare for what people will describe as the rainy day or the emergency, right? So awareness, critical. Next is income, right? Creating a steady flow of income, ideally through multiple sources, is really, 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 really important. My encouragement for you is whatever it is that you're creating income within, find income that increases with the more that you put into it, right? This is the life of an entrepreneur, can relate to this a lot, but there's also many business models that operate out there nowadays where the more that you do, the greater success you create, the greater that you're going to get paid. Profit shares, bonus programs, starting your own business. But the one thing we can avoid, like the Black Plague, is a base salary with no chance of movement, because that's not going to create the financial future that you desire. Building incentive systems with your employer, or building your own business where you're going to know that you're going to produce based off how much you input, is absolutely critical. And then as you start to build that initial steady stream of income, which will have sub income streams based off these different incentives or different entrepreneurial goals that you have, you can then open up into other income streams as well, whether that be investments, whether that be other adventures and creations you tend to go down, whether that be a second job. Multiple streams of income are critical, because if the first one doesn't work, at least you know that you're going to have a system to back that. Next is the management component, which I do want to touch on for a moment, which is, as all this money is coming in, how do I actually oversee it all? And then next, how do I allocate it, which is the 4th part of the model. So the management piece, thank goodness for the internet and for computers. It makes that process 100 times easier.
This is what we call bookkeeping.
This is what we call bookkeeping. This is also what we are currently in the process of building, which is the Life OS, the operating system. So I have a bunch of things that I'm currently playing with right now. I can touch on them, but again, we have the wizard here. So Wizard, tell us about the Life OS that you've been developing.
Yeah, I wanted a streamlined dashboard that is a library of all my most important financial, legal, personal assets that make up my life. And whether that's, knowing where, like how many credit cards you have, what your credit score is, how much debt you have, what your payment management looks like, if your bills are on auto pay, like these are the things that you should know and you should have
what subscriptions also are
what
you
your subscriptions doing
for?
a subscription audit, knowing what your budget is, having a rainy day fund, 3 to 6 months of savings. And then you can look at your investments, whether that be, through the stock market, ETFs, crypto, real estate, et cetera. And so part of what I'm building in terms of the LIFO operating system is a place that manages and houses all of that. And there's a financial component of that you can look at and see all of that in one place. And to me, that cuts down so much time of having to if you just upfront put the time in to put all the information in there, and you can take an hour to do it, to go and look at your credit card statements and to understand when's the last, where you are on your taxes, and put the reminders and the renewal dates and all of that stuff in one place, and then have it support you and have it remind you. To me, that's ideal.
Yeah, I could not agree more. So just to get really tactical here for a second, Tori's building this incredible system on Notion right now, which is a really cool task management system. Keep an eye on Tori Gordon on Instagram. She's going to be sharing more on that in the coming weeks, and we'll hopefully have something that's really accessible to you. On me, on the other hand, so for the longest time, I did it old school, which was just spreadsheets and calendar and notes, which are great. And a lot of my finances are managed through that right now. But I'm realizing that I'm actually majorly underutilizing the resources that are available in today's world. And I'm actually overutilizing my brain, which is coming back to the mental body. The question is how do we create capacity? We create capacity through automation and delegation. We either find other people to do it or we find tools to do it, right? So let's not forget opening up capacity in the mind, automation and delegation, applying that to our finances. A couple tools I would highly recommend looking at. So first and foremost, I rely on ChatGPT a lot. I know it's the hot tool nowadays. It's really good to get the initial financial picture because you can just upload everything into it, which is as easy as just typing it down or saying it in a voice note. So it takes literally no time, and it at least organizes it in a way where it gives you a sense of what the most important thing is. I'm gonna get a tiny bit financial for a moment, is a projected cash flow model. So you can have a sense of, based off this income that I'm expecting, which may be variable depending upon how you're earning income, like we talked about a moment ago with multiple income streams based off incentives or entrepreneurial ventures. What are my expenses looking like? What are my debt? What are my taxes? What are my investments, and so forth? What's my projected cash flow model over the course of the next several years, right? What is my, and then from there, you can start actually sketching out goals, right? If I know that I'm on track to be at, $500K in cash over the course of the next 6 months for potential, how can I structure my goals around that, right? How can I structure my goal with a vehicle, my goal with a home, my goal with whatever it is, the thing that you desire. But the point is, you're working forward, not backward. It's not, I want this goal, so I'm going to do all these things. It's, I'm putting myself in a position to have this available to me. What can I then do with it, right? I think oftentimes we operate from the other perspective, which is, I really want that thing. My invitation is, how do I enable myself to be able to get the thing that I desire? So I like to work forward versus working backwards. Doesn't mean don't have goals, but it also means stay grounded in the things that you actually have available to you today, and build up from that. So a couple of tools that I would invite playing with. Notion is great. Another one that I've been exploring a lot. Like I mentioned, I've been doing a lot of work in chat, but also Monarch and Copilot Money are really interesting. They're both two different tools. They're both AI powered. They both give you that full financial picture that Tori was mentioning and give you a sense of your financial health. So play with that. The last thing I'll share, and this is a really simple model that, again, comes in this great book, The Wealthy Barber. It's the 50-20-10-10-10 rule. So 50% of the money that's coming in is moving towards my essentials. Those are my basic expenses. 20% is moving to savings and investments. 10% is hopefully you have this 10% free, but is moving to paying down debt or credit. 10% is for philanthropy and 10% is for fun, right?
Where's taxes?
That's in there. That would fall into like essential living. Basically
30%.
100%. That would likely fall into the essentials category because you can't avoid that, unfortunately. So again, roughly 50, maybe 60% into essentials, 20% in savings and investments, the remaining 30 distributed across, hopefully no debt or credit, but some growth and fun, giving back. It's a simple model. It allows you to make sure that every dollar has a purpose. And that's a great technique that you can use as you're figuring out your allocation model. So we will go much deeper in the financial body, but if you take away nothing from this, the main thing is to open up your bank account and see where you are, and don't make decisions just simply off the things you desire, but actually make decisions off the resources that you have available today, so that you don't end up in that position where something shocks and surprises you down the line. So again, the goal here is not just wealth, but it's it's stability and it's sovereignty along the way to achieving that thing. So that being said, we've covered a lot of really amazing bodies throughout our time here over the course of these 2 episodes. I want to close with 2 that are interconnected in many ways, and oftentimes I feel like are underrepresented in this greater conversation, which are the primal and the spiritual bodies. I feel like oftentimes the spiritual body we can feel a disconnection with if we don't have these other energetic bodies in place, which is why I leave it as what we'll close with today. And the primal body is one that I feel like is really underrepresented in today's world, because we've become couch creatures, because we've become indoor cats in a way, right? And so when I think about the primal body, I think of it as being the most raw and instinctual version of ourselves. Like, it is the animal, it's the lion, the tiger, the eagle, the wolf, the elephant, whatever it is that you identify with that lives within you. It's the part that thrives in sunlight, in nature, in movement, in breath. And I believe that modern life has made us forget that in a lot of ways. So I have spent a lot of time over the course of the last 2 years not neglecting that body. After years and years of being disconnected from it, it's awakened a whole new part of me. And when it's not alive, particularly over the course of the last couple of months, if Tori and I have been in this transition period and I haven't spent as much time with it, I absolutely notice the anxiety and the fatigue and so forth that comes from it. So, there's a lot that I implement in my life to try to stay connected to it. As a fellow animal, as a fellow very fierce and primal person, like, what is it that you do on a week-to-week basis to make sure that you come back to your primal body?
Yeah, this is, again, like you said, I think it's one that gets neglected a lot, and it's one that I desire and have desire to spend time on. The thing that helps me connect most to my primal body is hard physical exercise. So I used to do a lot of kickboxing and stuff that would
very
help
legit
me
athlete here
get into a state of really releasing the energy in my body, whether that's a hard run or a hard workout. And the other is sunlight and nature.
Yeah. Your time in Big Bear, I feel like you were so connected to your primal body.
Important to me. Yeah. When I am in nature, which again, being in Vegas is just frankly has been really challenging at different seasons of the year, that can go undernourished. But we spent multiple weeks in Big Bear and I was just a whole different person. You get me in a certain climate and I transform into this other person. And recently, it's funny, I got us e-bikes and I have been really enjoying being outside in the fall, cooler weather here. And I realized, thinking back to childhood, I thrive outdoors. I thrive being able to spend as much time outdoors as possible. And so it's really important for me to feel connected to Mother Nature, to feel connected to the nature cycles, the moon and the sun and the plants and the animals and all of that. And so getting outside is huge.
Touch grass. Yeah, I was fortunate to, and it's not, it's not surprising to hear from you that that's a body that you want to spend more time in, because I think that's a statement that reflects a lot of us in the modern world, that we're not as alive in this body. We may not even know that this body exists, right? I was blessed to spend the first 4 months of 2024 living on the big island of Hawaii, where it's all about connection with your primal body. And what that culture taught me it taught me a lot, but one of the big things that it taught me is living your life in alignment with the seasons of the earth, right? So we are so backwards, we go into the new year in January thinking that that's the time for revival and motivation and creation. And that's if we were to dial it back 500 years, that's winter, that's in our cocoon,
Not a time for
hibernating, not our time for creation, which is why so many people struggle to get stuff off the ground at the beginning of the year. And yet when we kick into summer, everyone's energy is flying off the charts, right? And so I'd really encourage you to see how your life moves with the seasons and try to set up a life that allows you to live seasonally to the best of your ability. I mean, I recognize that the modern world is not constructed for that, but it doesn't mean that it can't be for your inner world. Secondarily, to Tori's point too, one of the things that I love playing with is how often can I not be following like the social norm, right? How often can I try being in environments where, and most of the environments are going to be constructed on my own, where I don't have to have my shoes on, right? I don't have to be wearing socks. I may not even need to wear deodorant. I may not even need to take a shower. I may not even do my hair. I mean, I get that these ideas can feel radical, but like this is the return back to the primal body. It's removing all of what society has conditioned us and thought and made us believe is what it means to be human. Human is is living life as the animal, right? Living life with our body, with our feet in the dirt, our body in the sun, our submerged in the ocean, touching sand, earth, trees, and other humans, moving with instinct, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that be dancing, stretching, shaking, breathing. So I encourage you to find one way in your day that you can do something that otherwise wouldn't be perceived as being okay, but that feels more alive and more raw and more true to you. And it might be something, again, as simple as when everyone else says, hey, we're going to go eat indoors today for lunch, that you say, you know what, I'm going to go sit outside for 30 minutes. It might be something as simple as someone saying, hey, well, I'm going to jump in this Uber and we're going to go for, we're going to take a ride to this restaurant. You say, I'm going to take a walk. Like, encourage yourself to stretch yourself back to where you became, which ironically it should be a return, but oftentimes it can feel like a stretch.
Yeah. The primal body is often in direct conflict with social conditioning and
100%.
social norms. And so it's going to rub up against that. And that's important to know. And so it's going to feel like going against the grain. It's also going to, like, when you're making all your decisions based on what is socially acceptable and normal, it's often drowning out the voice of your natural instincts and your natural desire and creativity and all of those things. So just keep that in mind.
I couldn't agree more. And your primal body will sharpen your intuition. Your primal body will lead you to greater embodiment of what you desire, and it will allow your inner voice to speak more clearly through you. And I think as a result of this all, it opens up your channel to something that's higher, right? When we come back here, when we come back to our home, we also come back into connection with the divine, which leads me to the spiritual body, where I'm really grateful to be able to close today. As I said, with the wizard next to me, with the goddess, priest, warrior, queen, wizard, the great Tori Gordon. And so the spiritual body, I think so much of this conversation around the other 6 energetic bodies is coming into balance so that we can quiet the noise, right? And start to hear the signal, right? And start to listen to the sacred whisper. Right. So for me, I almost feel like the spiritual body is sort of the end state that we get to be connected to as a result of coming into balance with the other 6 energetic bodies. And it is where purpose and meaning and guidance and truth all exist in this space of divinity. So I'd love to turn this over to you and talk about what it means to come into connection with your spiritual body.
I think one of the things that comes to mind is to think about the word spirit, and a word that we're, used to hearing a lot is inspired. So if you're struggling or you feel like this may be an area of your life where you feel less connected, one place to start would be to look for inspiration. What inspires you? Because that is connecting you to spirit, to the spirit of life itself. And it's giving off an energy that is trying to magnetize you to it if you would follow what inspires you. My relationship to my spiritual body it's been interesting, right? I think pain will push you, and to a point, or fear will push you to a point, and then vision and inspiration will pull you. And it's important to notice the difference. You know, a lot of my spiritual life at the beginning of my life, up until my mid-20s, was spiritually pushed from fear of, if I don't do this, if I don't have this relationship with a higher power, if I don't follow Jesus, if I don't do X, Y, and Z, then something bad will happen. It was pushed from a place of fear and shame and guilt. And that was the motivating force to have a spiritual relationship of any kind. And how that's transformed is when I actually got in touch with the divine from a deep, authentic, true place, how that transformed and pulled me into a greater connectivity with life itself, versus it being a place that I'm running to because I'm running from myself, right? Sometimes spirituality, we run to it because we're running from all these other areas in our life that we don't want to, and we hope that the spiritual body will be our savior, right? To save us from all of these other things that are in chaos and are kind of disheveled.
Repent.
Right. And if you repent and if you enter into this type of relationship, then it'll fix all your problems. And that's not the case at all. I think inviting in a relationship with spirit, God, Christ consciousness, whatever you want, nature, like anything that is larger than you, this higher consciousness doesn't invite, it is not an automatic like path to making everything rosy in your life. That prayer is going to invite everything that's going to like disrupt your life in order to make it built on a foundation of truth and love. And so praying a prayer to whatever you want to call it as an invitation to become quote unquote more spiritual is not there to fix things. It's there to reveal everything that is not based in truth and love. And sometimes that is very disruptive and very painful, but it is how we return to our essence and our true identity in where we come from, which is, in my opinion and in my experience, one of oneness and unity and connection to love. And that is the real truth, capital T, objective truth. And everything else is, more of what we call an illusion or a dream. And we're so fixated, I think, in our life on the 3D, on the physical. We're so fixated on what we can see with our five senses that we miss out on everything that's happening in the unseen. And if we can start to take a spiritual perspective on life, that everything is connected, we don't operate in isolation. All of these bodies are interrelated. We're in relationship to life itself, ongoing, and that all of it is a setup for our return to truth and love if we allow ourselves to have a spiritual perspective on it, versus one of separation and isolation, of thinking that we're alone, that we're separate, that it's up to me, that I'm, that there's nothing else beyond what I can see. And I think the spiritual path is one that we're all on, whether we know it or not. There is no, you're on a spiritual journey, in my opinion, whether you're consciously pursuing that journey or not, because I think at our core, before we're human beings, we're spiritual beings, having a human experience, doing this thing called life, and that is part of us, but it's not the whole story.
What I'll say is that, to me, the first step of being able to see the unseen is to stabilize the seen. And I think we've had a really interesting conversation over these two episodes of what it means to create stability and sovereignty and a sense of balance across the other 6 energetic bodies of your life, so that you can silence the noise, listen to the signal, and start to notice the things that are part of the essence of who you are. To me, we awaken the inner divinity and the inner God that exists within all of us in this connected, unified state that Tori was referencing. We start to notice that when the rest of our life quiets down and we start to just be with our being, right? So I invite you to find what that looks like for you. It can be something as simple as we've shared, being in silence, taking 5 to 10 minutes to meditate, journaling and allowing life to start to move and flow through you, practicing gratitude, which we've heard 100 times before, or just creating some ritualistic practices in your day that allow you to slow down and tune in.
And zoom out. We are so fixated on our problems and the things that are stressing us out and the things that are causing us pain. We're zoomed in on those things. A spiritual perspective allows us to zoom out and see the interconnectivity of all things and how things are not happening in isolation. They're part of a bigger pattern and network of information. And when we can zoom out, the thing that's causing us pain becomes so much more smaller in perspective and allows us to see, oh, actually this thing that I'm having resistance around or that I am having trouble accepting from a broader perspective, I can see actually how this is useful, how this is important, how this is integral in my becoming of, who I really am.
And in that, life, spirit, divinity becomes the greatest teacher to us versus feeling like something's taken away from us. Every opportunity, every action, every reaction is a blessing and a gift. And so I can't wait to continue to explore that dance and interconnectedness of all with you. I really believe that's where so much of the magic lives. And this particular conversation around spirituality is one that we will continue to explore as being one of the core elements of what it means and how it means to be human. So I want to close today by saying, first and foremost, it's an honor to be able to share this with you. I'm blessed to have you by my side, and I could not feel more grateful to be able to walk the path of finding balance amidst these bodies with you. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And to those that took the time to listen to us, I hope that if anything, we leave this episode leave these 2 episodes in a greater state of awareness. That is the first step in this journey, is being able to open that bank account, to look more deeply at the state of our body, to name the emotion that's coming up, to tune into the thoughts and the beliefs that are controlling us, to put our feet into the earth and remember what that feels like to be a child playing in the mud, to be able to tune out and zoom back so we can be aware of the sacred whisper that's coming to us. And of course, don't forget to open your bank account too. So I want to just remind us that the first step is awareness. The next steps are infinite, because the journey of self-mastery is not a destination. It's a path, and it's a daily practice that we get to walk on. So thank you for being here with us. Thank you for the willingness to take this step, and thank you for being human.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say is, just mirror right back to you. Grateful for this journey that we walk together, and all of the ways we continue to co-elevate, and that you challenge me and call me forward. And also for those that are watching, your life is always speaking to you. The question is, are you paying attention? Are you listening? And are you looking for the ways in which it's trying to give you the answers that you're asking for? Every question that you have, the answer is within you in terms of what is the right path for your soul to walk. Sure, there's things that we need to learn, skills we need to develop, information we don't have. But in terms of your soul path, you have that answer, and life is going to try. It is doing everything it can to reorient you in the direction that you are meant to go if you are willing to listen. So listen and follow the signs.
Keep walking on the way. It will continue to appear.
Thanks,
For
guys.
now, that's us.
Love you. See you next week on the How to Stay Human.
How to Stay Human.